Hello, everybody. How are you? And looking at everything, making sure that it's all right. Hello, everybody. This is the monthly UHF, VHF UHF, 30 megahertz and above live show. This is once a month on Saturdays. Let me just find here. And of course, we talk about everything that is above 30 megahertz. So unless some very unusual stuff, no shortwave today. And here is Mr. Paul saying hi to everybody while I pour the beer with the twist cap. Look at that. Looks beautiful. Yeah, we're going, this is a Blonde de Chambly. It's a blonde beer. Yes, it's beer. I don't think you want to have beer. He is kind of interested though. Maybe it's a beer cat. And here we go. Beautiful beer. Welcome aboard, everyone. And I don't know what this is, but I'm just gonna do something here. So, hey, everybody. Welcome to this live show. Mr. Paul the Cat saying hi to everyone. So, cheers, everybody. Put my phone here. Welcome aboard. Today we're gonna do some answer some questions. Well, I'll put the satellite tracking software if I can find my keyboard. What did I do with the keyboard? Oh, it's here. And we're going to start that satellite tracking software. Overtron. Here we go. Yes, we do want. And we'll do this. We'll do a update to the satellites, auto update TLE, so that we have the latest, greatest satellite tracking info in here. And here we go. I'll mute the volume so you guys don't hear the pinging all the time of everything that's coming through. And welcome to this live show, everybody. Let's put the camera back to a normal position, just like this. So welcome, my friends, and hope that you enjoy today's show, where we will, of course, be checking out satellites. And I've got a few little, I took out all my old stuff that I used in the past to listen to the VHF, what the ancestors of the scanner radios and everything that I have here. So we're going to check that out, of course. You might notice that there's two radios that look pretty much the same on each side of me here. One is this one is the SW60, this one is the CB60. Very close, pretty much the same coverage, except one is shortwave, one is the CB band channel, 40 channels. And we've got another one here in the back that is, I don't know if you can see it from here. No, we'll have to move on the other side. And this one here, the little brownie, an old brownie. This is an old one with the airband and the VHF from 108 to 175 megahertz. So this is something I found at a flea market, I believe, for like $5 or something like that. Anyways, we'll be checking that out. Hope you enjoyed today's show. It's always a lot of fun to be here. So we're going to tune around and check out what's happening today. There's a nice chat room for those that wonder. My name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, and we're here to have you use your old scanner radios. Because, yeah, I get this message all the time of people telling me there's nothing to listen to. These are old crap stuff that you don't, there's no use for them anymore. Everything's digital. Well, when you say that, it's because you actually tell me that you haven't listened at all, and you don't listen at all. Because, yeah, there are digital stuff, but there's still a lot of analog stuff to listen to if you just tune around. It's interesting because what I notice in the scanner hobby, and I see it all the time with the people that I know that had scanner radios in the years of where they were really popular, like the late 80s, early 90s. They once their favorite, what they enjoy listening to, it's just gone. It's like okay, well, there's nothing to listen to. A guy that I went to school with, when the police in Montreal became encrypted, digital and encrypted, he said, well, I got no use for my scanner radio anymore. There's nothing to listen to. Yes, there is, but you're just not looking at it. And one night he said, I'm curious, what is there to listen to when you say there's something to listen to? And I gave him tons of frequencies to try and said, oh, I wasn't aware that you could listen to all of that. Yep. So this is the icon here with the airport. So anyways, that's kind of interesting to see that people don't necessarily see all that there is to listen to and listen to all there is to listen to. So hello there, Mr. Bobby Burgess in Louisiana, USA. Richard Cook, nice to have you on board from the UK. Says there's tropical propagation on the FM band tonight, and you can pick up France with quite good conditions. Cool. That's a nice catch. Bobby says, I wonder if the Western world are thinking about DAB. There is some talk, but there's not real big efforts yet, at least here in North America. What else do we have? Bobby Burgess also says he got some contacts on AO85, a very nice amateur satellite that has many modes, by the way. You can even listen to, there are some slow scan TV pictures, and there's all sorts of things on AO85, which is very, very interesting. PLF Radio, bonjour, bienvenue de la France. Always nice to have you here. Mentam Bali, nice to have you on board from Colorado. Richard Cook has picked up a few airband transmissions yesterday. Cool, that is nice. That is nice. NL13851, nice to have you on board from the Netherlands. Radio Telescope, nice to have you here. Neil Toombs, nice to have you here, my friend from the UK, M0CJM. Andy Colley, nice to have you on board to E0REE. Pretty cool. Matt, MTK2, nice to have you on board. Says just getting in the car to go home from work. Have a bit of a nice storm in progress. Be careful, my friend. Stay safe. Fast Love says those brownies were very popular in the 70s. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. The brownies, I've seen a few of my uncles that had some of those. That for sure. We'll try to tune some stuff. They are very scratchy because they need to have the pots cleaned up and everything. But we'll try to tune some stuff on the old ones. Of course, they're not super interesting in the fact that they only have their telescopic antennas. But we're gonna check that out. We'll try to tune into some satellites if we can get anything. Here, I'm gonna actually use my tablet and load up the Heavens Above satellite tracking info, so I'll know what satellites are coming towards us today. And what do we have? So Heavens Above, right here, and here we go. So what else do we have? Jason Stafford, nice to have you here, and pretty cool to have you on board. Says 5th thumbs up. Cool. Tom Valley's number 7. Apartment of Defense, nice to have you here. Good afternoon. Unpopcon, nice to have you here from Central Pennsylvania. Pretty cool. And yes, they do need your care facility. I should actually take all three of these and you take care of them for me, and I know they'll come back perfect condition for the tuning and everything. And so we'll talk about that, Fastload. Absolutely, they do need their care. They're very scratchy in the volume and everything, but you know, here I was listening. I don't know if I can hear it. It's interesting. Trying to see what I can hear, but you know. So you see, it's very scratchy, and even the squelch is scratchy. Interesting. I'm not getting the weather on this one. I need to move the antenna. But anyways, we'll tune around. Yes, that's ouch. And that one also is very scratchy. It needs your caring hands. So this one is I'm getting the weather on 162.55. The brownie is also getting the weather, I believe. This buzzing is interesting. I think it comes from. No. It's interesting because that isn't there usually. And I think it's because the hum is because of something working. Something that is actually kind of maybe one of the wall warts that I have, or something that's really doing a lot of noise in it. So radio satellites, here we go. So we're gonna be checking that out. And so of course we'll see what we can have. Yeah, it could be. It could be. Because when I unplug it from here and plug it on another wall outlet, it doesn't buzz. So it's definitely something here. And I know one thing also. I've noticed that my router that's right there, I hear the pulses of the router in the brownie. When the volume is down, as long as it's just turned on, I hear my router, the pulses of the router interfering with the brownie. So yeah, some of some of these switching power supplies that come with devices are dreadfully noisy. So this is airport. Let's just mute that for a moment here. I've got on the icon here. I've got
in northern New York, Essex, Franklin, and Clinton counties.
The weather.
The current time is 3:13 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On the weather map, a cold front will cross the region this evening with a few rain and snow showers and temperatures remaining on the coast of normal.
So this is the
across the area.
Burlington, Vermont weather. More than 100 kilometers away from here, and on 162.400. This is my beacon. If I want to know if the antennas work right, if everything seems okay, if I want to test if I want to test the a portable scanner to see if it's sensitive, one of the first frequencies I will tune to was 162.400, because I know that if I get that, then we should be in business, and I should be hearing a lot of signals. And it pretty much tells me how sensitive a radio is. For example, I've got the old an old unit in here, and this one, if I tune around, it doesn't want to give me at all the it doesn't get 162.400 at all. And if I do the same, for example, with the icon, just go the volume down. If I do with the icon here, usually the icon gets this quite easily. So right now I'm probably not positioned well, but it usually catches, even though I'm not getting it right now. So anyways, it gives me an idea of how sensitive a radio is, and if the antenna is good, and so on. When I tune 162/400, it's really the best signal of choice to see if everything's all right. Radio-free iPad RFI. Hey TL, nice to have you here, and always cool to be on board. I'm a little tired from my karaoke night and my with all with my friends yesterday, but it was a lot of fun though. Jason Stopper says, saw something cool I had not heard before, being able to record a radio spectrum to VHS and play it back years later through an SDR seems like a radio time machine. Anyone ever tried it? No, I've never tried that. Never tried that. So we got some questions, and there's a few little things that I want to talk about. So one of the first questions that we're going to tackle before we maybe tune a little bit more is the frequency bands and their propagation. And somebody asked me a question of, okay, well, what are the different characteristics? Wow, it's sunny. It's not supposed to be sunny. Let me just do something here to tackle that sun that was not visible for most of the day today, and try to make it a little more interesting for the viewing. Less of sun in my face. So we'll do this. It helps a little bit, not a lot, but it does. So anyways, the question came from the fact that he was noticing that on some frequencies he was hearing signals from farther away than others, and he was wondering, all the aspects of the propagation of the VHF UHF signals. And it depends on the frequencies that you go to, because one of the things that people tend to just not really think about is that shortwave propagation goes up to 30 megahertz, and when there's sporadic E-skip or when the solar activity is really high, you do get 10 meter bands open, for example, and you hear signals at 28 megahertz, but 30 megahertz ain't far away, and the top part of the 10 meter band, 29,700, is just below 30 megahertz. So we have this tendency, and I've seen a lot of people have a tendency to say, well, above 30 megahertz is just line of sight. And it's not exactly true, because it depends on a lot of things. So when sporadic E-skip, for example, happens, well, 30, 40, 50 megahertz can become and propagate pretty much like a shortwave signal. It will actually bounce off the ionosphere. But you need to have very dense patches of sporadic E-skip, for example, or very high solar activity. An example that it comes back in a lot of books was in the 1950s, when we had a record solar maximum in the 50s, and the solar flux was very, very high. So the ionosphere was actually intensely ionized. And what happened is there were actually people complaining that in North America, some stations were being interfered with by signals from other countries on their TVs. And that's because the ionosphere was so dense that the bottom channels 2, 3, 4, that were typically 57 to 80 megahertz in range, well, these were propagating like shortwave signals do, because the solar activity was so intense that the ionosphere was capable of supporting such high frequencies. And it could go even higher Sportic ESCAP, for example, sometimes it's the patches are so intense that people can DX on the FM band and hear stations from far away on 80 or 90 megahertz, or if you have a radio capable of going down to the some of the European frequencies that go down to like 64 megahertz on some receivers. Well, you can tune in and hear these signals from transatlantic signals on the FM band. So you got to understand that the bottom part up to maybe 100 megahertz, and it's not clear cut like that, but for the purpose of the explanation, you've got up to, let's say, 100 megahertz that could, when conditions are right and the ionosphere is dense enough, the ionized patches are dense enough, well, that will actually propagate these signals pretty long distance in the same manner that a shortwave signal. And you'll see that it's sportic ESCAP or it's that type of propagation because it will fade in and out like a shortwave signal. We notice that shortwave signals tend to fade in, fade out, and we're wondering why. Well, the same phenomena of the ionosphere that basically kind of changes all the time. Well, on the VHF range, you'll hear the signals fade out, fade in. In the past, when I started listening to this to scanner radio, and not really knowing at the beginning that this could happen, I was surprised in the 90s when we had we had a really strong solar cycle in the 90s, and I remember tuning in to to scanning 30 to 50 megahertz on my scanner, and hearing these signals with a distinct American accent, voice in English, and hearing all sorts of transmissions. And it's only later when I actually was reading an article in Monitoring Times that I could actually I understood that, oh, I am actually getting signals from the United States. And once I was able to actually pinpoint such a signal because there was a police chase. And it's when I started listening to the descriptions of where they were, the streets, and the information they were given, that I noticed, oh, I'm listening to a police chase in Texas. And it was somewhere around between 35, 37 megahertz. I don't remember the exact frequency. And so that is something that can happen. And if you actually see the 10-meter band is open, and that's pretty much what I would do. I would, for example, go on my radio, check the famous Super Bowl frequency, the CB channel 6. And if you hear tons of CBers that are skipping over, well, you can start thinking maybe I should tune around from 30 to megahertz and up and see if I can hear anything. That also works in the 6-meter band. 6-meter band is one of those bands that I just love when it's open, when it actually has sportic ESCAP happening, because it's just so cool. You start having signals propagating. If you guys saw a video that I posted, my record for a signal is Brazil. I heard Brazil on 50 megahertz. I mean, it's purely amazing when you think about it. When propagation is right, when the conditions are there, well, that can happen. So that's one way propagation can happen in the, I would say below 100 megahertz, there's possibility of that happening. It is true that for the most part, and for the majority of the time, most of these are line of sight. I mean, you'll barely get anything above, maybe further away than 100 kilometers. There are other phenomena happening also in the VHF range, like if you listen to the 2-meter band. One example of that I often check is I will simply check the weather channels. One example is 162.525. 162.525. Most of the time I have nothing here, but sometimes I get a weather station from state of New York, that is much farther away than the one I'm listening to here. I remember pinpointing there was about 170 kilometers away, which is a pretty good distance. And it was there one day. It lasted for a couple of hours, then it disappeared, and that's because other phenomena that can affect the VHF range is there's tropospheric propagation, temperature inversions can actually make or trap signals, which means that you can hear a signal 200 miles away, clear as if it was a local station for a few minutes, sometimes a few hours, before the changing of the propagation, the tropo and all of that, the changing temperatures, and it just stops, at some point. I remember one night listening to a 2-meter band repeater here that's in the South Shore, and they were getting contacts from stations that were clearly about 250 kilometers away. And they were coming into the repeater clear. It was incredible. It lasted a full evening, and everybody was talking about it the next day. It was like, wow, did you hear that yesterday? There were stations from really far away checking in and listening to the repeater, and it was like local. And there's a lot of these things happening, but you gotta be there and you gotta listen regularly, because it's easy to miss out on all of these phenomena if you don't tune around the bands. I don't tune the VHF UHF range as much as I used to. 90% of what I do when I tune around now is pretty much tuning to listen to satellites most of the time. And but there's so many other things to listen to, and the propagation phenomena that I talk about, well, can really greatly enhance all that and make it really, really interesting to listen to signals from really, really far away. And then you got UHF. I would guess, as you get higher in frequency, the higher the frequency, the less of an effect of all of this. I hear less of these types of phenomena, say on the 70 centimeter 440 megahertz ham band, for example. I'll hear more of those things happening in the 2-meter band. I guess, I don't know, maybe as we move higher in frequency, less and less of that actually does make a difference in the propagation. Matt, cool. You're home safely. Cool. Hey, Bullfrog, KD2CXU. Nice to have you on board from Albany, New York. And really, really pretty cool. So, I'm on the process of putting Linux on an old Panasonic notebook. Yeah, Linux is an interesting way of using an older computer and having it, get a little more miles at some point. There are some Linux distros, by the way, that are good for older machines, and they're really lighter. So just check that out carefully. Some like Ubuntu are very they're quite heavy distros, and they even on an old machine they kind of struggle and are slow to react. What else do we have? Philips Radio. Do you know how high solar flux was in the 50s then? I don't know how high the solar flux was in the 50s, but I'm going to give you an idea of how high it must have been, because when I was monitoring a lot of the propagation stuff in the late 80s through the 90s, I was taking note of solar flux from the peak of solar activity. And I remember that in the 90s, one of the the maximum of a solar cycle, I was getting readings of solar flux that were often 320, 340, 350. If you compare that to our little meager 70, 67, 68 we have right now, because we're at the bottom of the cycle, it gives you an idea that at 350, I mean, you would probably even then get some propagation from, 6 meter band. I didn't know anything about it at the time, but 6 meter band was probably open every day with a solar flux of 300. I mean, it must have been. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware of all of that when that happened, unfortunately. Steve in Australia, nice to have you on board. So, Rock Ristorante, nice to have you on board from Stockholm, Sweden, SM0SBT. And basically, yeah, Linux Mint, you won't be lost because Linux Mint kind of imitates as a similar workings as they're trying to make it look like a Windows desktop with a taskbar and a kind of a start button if you want. You can try Linux Mint. On an old one, I'm trying to remember, there's a special distro for old machines. There's not just one, there's a couple of old distros for machines that are older and have less power and less RAM. I'm trying to remember, that doesn't come to mind. But try different distros, and you'll see some that are working better than others, especially for older machines. Matam Valley says can recommend Debian Stretch on the really small boxes and had a great success with Ubuntu on an old gateway. Yeah, I have a 17-inch Core 2 here that does date several years back, and Linux Mint worked well. It was just a little bit sluggish, but it does work well. So there's a technically you should be able to use the SDR. You can use FLDG works on Linux. It has a Linux version, so you can use FLDG for decoding signals, and you can also, there are many decoding software that are made for Windows that work in Wine on Linux. So if you have Wine installed, you can actually have like MMSSTV, for example, works perfectly well. And I believe somebody told me multi-PSK works well in Wine on Linux, so you can try that out. I've tried MMSSTV, works really well for decoding slow scan TV within a Linux distro. So check that out. There's if you don't have all the software that satisfies you for decoding, you can maybe at least. I got a cat that's looking intense right now. He wants something, and basically he's you can have all of that work probably through Wine. I don't know if anybody has run an SDR through Wine though. I don't know if that would be compatible. But there are ways to run the SDR on Linux distros. There's a lot of people that actually use Linux distros to run SDRs. Shortwave frequency channel. Bonsoir. Hey there from Sweden. Nice to have you on board. So yeah, if it's your first time using Linux, you'll have to. There's a learning curve because it's not always easy to configure and have working right when you're not used to it. What's nice with the new distros like Mint is now they have app stores, and there's a lot of apps and software in these app stores that are actually already available. So for example, if you want to track satellites, the first thing I install when I'm on a Linux distro is gpredict. That is on pretty much on every store that I've looked at, and I'm gonna have to go see what my cat wants because he's very intense. He actually put his paw on my knee, looking at me, saying, "Hey, I want something." So just give me 2 seconds, guys. I will be back in a few seconds. I'll leave you with the very entertaining weather as I will probably, he wants to go out probably, so I'll be back in a few seconds.
Winds light Sunday, low tonight -7, high Sunday -2. Weather conditions at 3 p.m. Montreal Dorval, light snow showers, temperature +2, wind west-northwest 16 kilometers per hour, barometric pressure 101.7 kilopascals and rising. Relative humidity 73%. Mirabel, temperature +1, wind west 10 kilometers per hour. Saint-Jean, temperature +1, wind west 9 kilometers per hour. Huntington, temperature +1, wind west-northwest 10 kilometers per hour.
And we are back. So he wanted to go out. He wanted to go out. So anyways, there's a lot of fun to be had. And, it's a fun way also to learn more about PCs. And you'll see there's a lot of stuff. The only problem is sometimes it gets a little more tricky when you have to install the packages. Sometimes, the software comes into a package. So, and if you want to install it, Bullfrog 89, what I would recommend is you can download the ISO of the Linux Mint. And there's a software called Pendrive Linux that you can use. Take the ISO, the image, and make a bootable USB thumb drive with it. And you can install it from the USB thumb drive. One trick that I will give you, Bullfrog, all of these distros are actually live, what's called live CD. You can try them without having to erase anything on your PC first. So if you're not sure, and if you're not sure of the distro, you can actually put it on the USB thumb drive, boot from that. You can actually run it from that. See if it works well, if it goes well, and if it has everything you need. And if it does, then you can use that bootable USB thumb drive. And then, if you want, erase the hard drive and install a workable Linux on your hard drive on the PC. So that's one of the first thing. That's the first thing you should do. Just boot from it, test it out. If it seems to work well and you seem to be happy, then you can, and you can also have it partition the hard drive and have it boot alongside Windows if you want also. But just one thing of, if you're running Windows 10, you got to be careful because every time there's a new version of Windows 10 and you have dual booting with Linux, it often breaks the Linux boot partition. And which we wonder why it does that. So anyways, if you do have Windows 10, it has a tendency every time there's a new version of Windows 10, like now there's the October 2018 update, it has a tendency to break the Linux bootable partition. And that is true. It is slower when you are running it off a USB drive. That you got to keep in mind. If it's slow, a little bit slow, remember that you're running it from a USB thumb drive, which is slower than it could be installed on your main hard drive on your PC. But it's a lot of fun to play with, and I think you're just going to have, if you like computers a little bit, I think you're just going to have a lot of fun trying out all of these. And there's a lot of Linux distro. That's for sure. One of the things that is that I can't run on mine is my Ephedry SDR doesn't want to run on any Linux distro. I've tried it in many ways and using software, and the Ephedry doesn't respond to any of the software that are made for software-defined receivers. But the main SDRs, most main software-defined receivers have a way to have them working in Linux. So that's for sure. One of the questions also that people ask me regularly, so I was talking earlier about how people have a tendency to not really listen much, and they kind of tell me, well, there's really nothing much to listen to, and so on. And remember that a lot of the transmissions that are on the VHF UHF range are intermittent. It's not like listening to a fixed shortwave broadcast or a fixed signal like on the AM or the FM band. It's radio communications between two people, a company, whatever. They're not transmitting 24 hours. They're transmitting when they need to say something. So that means when you scan a band, so if you scan the VHF range, for example, what I will often do is scan 138 to 174. Don't scan just once or twice. Scan and let it scan a lot. Because if you do, for example, a full afternoon of scanning, you will actually notice that there are some signals that you might have missed on the previous scans that will pop up. Once again, because all of that is intermittent. They broadcast when they have something to say or something to ask. So by scanning the band regularly from one limit to the other, and I would say that's one of my main ways of tuning the VHF or UHF range. I will scan from one range to the other and let it scan all the time. And if it stops on a signal or something, I just let it. I take note of what it is if I haven't heard it before, and like that, you hear new stuff all the time. Because you'd be surprised at the amount of signals and the amount of transmissions that are across the VHF UHF range. It's just that one scan might not provide you with that. It might seem like the band is kind of quiet, but in reality, the band is alive with signals. It's just you are not on the frequency that's transmitting at the right time. That's where also using a software-defined radio, SDR, on the VHF UHF range is fun. Because with the spectrum, you can actually have a visual of signals that pop up within the frequencies that you're actually tuning around. So that's another cool thing of an SDR, is you will have a visual of any signal that will actually pop up on a frequency somewhere. But if you don't have that and you have an old scanner radio, scan within frequency ranges. 138, 174, or what I'll often do is, the air band, scan from 108 to 136. And you will find that it's not just the local airports that you might hear. Scanning, for example, the air band will result in, often you will hear two planes talking with each other, or unusual things that are popping up from helicopters or whatever, that they don't necessarily want to talk to the airport. They're maybe doing something else, but they'll have two-way communications through the airband. And so scanning the frequency range will actually give you lots of signals. Very surprising. Another range that I will scan, for example, very often is 400 to 400 to about 470 megahertz, because there's a lot of stuff in there. 400 to 470, you'll hear businesses that have two-way radios. You might hear there's amateur radio stuff, of course, on the 70 centimeter band from 430 to 450. There's especially when there's bad weather, one of the best times to tune around and kind of see what is available, what you can hear on the bands. Tune when there's bad weather, because even outside of emergency services, two-way radios with a lot of companies, you'll hear, for example, maybe some shipping companies that will have their trucks all around, and they're going to start talking about how bad the weather is and how the conditions are on the road and so on. And often a lot of the frequencies that you might never have noticed that are alive are actually alive with signals, because now that it's the weather's bad, they have something to say and they're talking about it. So it could actually make some very interesting listening. Last year, well, this year in last March, we had an ice storm, and I remember I took I got 4 portable scanners. I took all 4 of them, and I scanned different ranges. When something was interesting, I punch in the frequency on one of the scanners and leave it there, while the others are scanning at other ranges to hear different transmissions. And I ended up having 3 scanners on 3 separate frequencies from businesses that were on the road and that were talking about how bad the weather was. And my 4th scanner, I was just scanning and scanning to see if there's anything else that could be of interest. So you got to think about that. When bad weather arrives, when something unusual arrives, you'll be surprised at the amount of analog signals that you can actually listen to. It is true that we are getting into an era of many digital signals, and there are specialized scanners that do this, like the Whistler TRX1 or the Icom ICR30, or there's a lot of these. There's a unit that has one also. Those that have the spectrum monitor, by the way, this month they have there's a special on scanning receivers, and you see here, I'm gonna just go here, and we'll show you guys just the cover page for the November spectrum monitor, and you'll have an idea of the cover page for this for November. It gives you an idea immediately of what they're going to talk about. It's there we go, 2018 Scanner Radio Buyer's Guide, and they talk about those digital scanners that can decode different modes that will, of course, open up a new, a bigger world of communications. This is something that I need to get at some point, maybe modernized by scanner radios with one of those modern receivers at some point. So, of course, these will bring a lot more stuff, but these are expensive. And one of the things about the hobby, there's kind of 2 types of people. There's the real radio geeks like us that will at some point, shell out hard cash and pay expensive radios, buy expensive radios because you just want one. But there's a lot of people out there that still have and own old scanners that are analog. And one of the things I want to try to promote on this channel also at the same time is, hey, you don't have to have the most modern stuff. There's still stuff to listen to with your good old scanner radio, and don't throw it away, because you'd be surprised at still the amount of analog signals. Actually, I was reading an article a couple of months back, mentioning that many agencies in the United States that went digital reverted back to analog in some markets because they just decided that, what, I think we're better analog. There was even a talk about how the New York police was using a lot of analog because they wanted, it's kind of a public relation thing. By having people listening in to the police frequencies, they were also at the same time saying, well, it's kind of an open thing. We don't hide anything. You can hear the transmissions and things we say. Maybe people will trust more. So there's all sorts of things. Some go digital, some don't. Some are on trunking. I've got my Pro 92 for trunking. But there's a lot of stuff. And don't throw away that old scanner. When I see somebody in the channel saying, well, you can't use these anymore, there's nothing to listen to, it's boring. That is not what I think, honestly. So Yeah, Skywave Bullfrog for with programs reinstalled. The problem with Skywave, it hasn't been updated in a long time, and I used Skywave maybe for 1 or 2 days, and it just works so badly that I just decided to, you know, go and use another distro. Brian Penny, nice to have you here. Says I use my Radio Shack Pro 2006 scanner for aircraft, marine, and amateur radio monitoring. Older scanners are great for air shows too. Absolutely. I got my Pro 2006. I forgot that I could have brought that thing here. I wonder if it's not too difficult to bring over here. Is it difficult or not? Test number 1. How difficult is it to bring my good old Pro 2006? And it's not difficult at all. Look at that. Here it is. So it's a little dusty, but it works. It's a little dusty, but it works. Here we go. And this is my good old Pro 2006. Let's try to make a little space for him. How about it, guys? I'll make a little space for the Pro 2006 right here. And it has a very dim display now, but it's still a beautiful radio. Let's plug it in. So it's on a little telescopic right now, but let's check that out. There we go, plugged in. This one too is scratchy. So this one too will need to be checked out by our friend Fastload. And here we go. And those are frequencies it's scanning right now. I don't know if it's going to stop on anything. Let's put the volume up a little. Oh. Okay, it has some FM stations, some FM stations on the FM band. So yeah, Pro 2006. Unfortunately, this is something I need to fix or need to be fixed. So that would be another good thing for Fastload. It could maybe change the famous electroluminescent display that is now so dim that it's almost impossible. I would, because you can buy these strips and change it, but I would like to find a better way of maybe like putting some LED lights instead, something that will remain in good working order for years rather than something that's going to dim over time, because that's the biggest problem with these. These were great, but the problem is the display dims, and when you use a lot, well, over years the display it gets really, really dim. That's the biggest problem. So with old Pro 2006 that I purchased, I purchased that in 1992 or something like that. It was on sale, I remember, and I just looked at it and said, okay. It was on, one of those days where it's payday and you feel rich. And back then I was still living with my mom. So of course, this didn't cost a lot of money. So it was payday, and I went to Radio Shack, and I saw this one, and I think it was on sale for like $299, which was something like $100 or $200 less. And I thought, okay, I want one. I'm gonna take it now. And which was a lot of fun with this also is just the little diodes that you would clip and you would receive the analog cell band back then. That was a lot of fun. I listened to a lot of amazing phone calls on the analog phone of the times. Bullfrog says there's an add-on for SDR Sharp. It's a scanning function that locks time, date, frequency of signals heard. You could leave it all day and come back. Yep. Another thing that I need to try also with SDR Sharp, for those that wonder, there's plugins for SDR Sharp that give you the capabilities of decoding some of those digital signals. So you can get yourself a cheap RTL, SDR RTL dongle, and with SDR Sharp and these plugins, you can apparently, and I need to try it out. I need to set one up and test that out. Make a lot of fun videos also at the same time on the channel, and be able to, of course, just check out and tune in the digital signals. Brian Penny says he bought the Pro 2006 in '92. It's around that time that I purchased mine, so yours and mine are almost the same age. It's about 92 also, 92 or 93. Brian, Iowa, nice to have you here. Says he still uses his 2006, but the display is really dim. Yeah, like mine. Display is extremely dim. You need to have a good light on it if you want to see what's the frequency. Department of Defense says I get lots of companies coming in. The local prison in the HIPAA Nightmare Hospital, Pogsag. Yeah, Pogsag. It's kind of nice to decode these little messages. And, there's a lot of stuff to... there's some places are more advanced than others on the encryption stuff. Like our Department of Defense says. Luckily, in his area, he says there's yet to encrypt, digitize the police, fire, and emergency services. Rock Restaurante says, I still use my realistic made in 1986, works perfectly. Absolutely. Oh, really? 16180. I got to try that out. I'm not hearing any audio right now, but they often mix these frequencies. I often hear the number station. I've heard often the number station on one of the RHC frequencies, Radio Vanny Cuba, and sometimes Radio Vanny Cuba on one of the number station. So they kind of switch these things wrong. They put the wrong feed. So, kind of interesting. Jerry DX, nice to have you on board. As Matt says, anyways, back to VHF UHF. But, when there's some things of interest, we can divert a little bit and see what's on. Jack N9IIF, nice to have you here. Radioactive, nice to have you on board. And it's always cool to be here. So, there's still stuff to listen to, and you gotta tune the frequency ranges, and let them, let your scanner can just go from one range to the other. Let it scan a range, and see what's on. For example, on the Pro 2006, it was cool because you can set limits and say, okay, scan from 136 to 174, and just check it out. So, oh well, that's life. We're on the VHF stuff today, and there's all sorts of things. One question I wanted to ask, I was thinking of asking you guys a question. What was the first VHF UHF radio or scanner radio that you've ever had in your life? So my first was a multiband radio that I don't remember the brand, and somewhere in 1980, 81, and it had the about 1980, it had the VHF band, the 108 to 174 frequency. And I could hear, I remember being surprised that I could hear airplanes. And I remember people telling me you can't receive airplanes. Airplanes are secret transmissions. And, people have these weird ideas that for some reason, a lot of stuff that is available in radio transmissions must be encrypted or must be impossible on little radios like we have, and it's when you show them that no, look at that, these things are powerful and they pick up signals. And I remember the first time the next door neighbor looking at with my multiband radio outside and saying, and he says, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm listening to the airplanes." And he says, "Well, you can't pick up airplanes. They're encrypted and you need special equipment." And I said, "Come here." And I was tuned to the airport frequency. And here is a corridor where planes pass all the time. And you should have seen the look on his face when the first thing that popped up at transmission is, "Oh, this is Air Canada 246. And I said, "Whoa, you just heard a plane." I said, "Yeah, tell you, I am listening to aircraft." One of the bad things about these radios, though, is that the airband, because airband transmissions are in AM mode, and a lot of these older multi-band radios, they tune just FM on all the VHF range. So the airplanes or the aircraft, even though you can hear what they sound a little distorted because they're not in the right mode. But that was a lot of fun, And then another day, a friend of mine pops up and looks at multi-band and says, "Oh, what are you doing with that?" And I said, "Oh, listen to the airplanes. I listen to the cops." Because back in 1980, and for a big chunk of the 80s, Montreal police was on the 150 megahertz range. So you could listen to the cops around 152 megahertz in Montreal. So I was tuning around and saying, "Hey, look at that. That's the police." And you could hear the police and transmissions on 150. Before they moved to UHF, 410 megahertz. Still analog. In the late 80s, they changed all their transmission, their frequencies, and they kind of changed all the communication stuff. And they ended up at 410 megahertz range with different channels. Until 2 years ago, when they finally gone encrypted, and that is impossible to listen to because they're not just digital, but they're also encrypted, so you can't listen. And there won't be any radios that will do that to decrypt these things because the regulations in Canada stipulate that you should not. It's illegal to decrypt transmissions that are not meant for you. So there's kind of regulation kind of saying, well, you can't have the receivers to decode the encryption of these things. It's just, a lot of changes. So my first one is a multiband that I don't remember what it was as a multiband radio. I remember it had AM, FM. It had something that I didn't know was shortwave back then that was stated as SW1, SW2. It had VHF high, maybe VHF low, but I'm not sure. But I think it was VHF low and VHF high, or VHF 1 and VHF 2, or something like that. And I tune around a lot with that radio, and I remember how that radio ended its life back then. I had a pair of headphones, and I would plug them into that radio with an adapter because it didn't have the right size for the headphones. But I didn't know the headphones I was using had a different impedance. So when I would plug it in, I didn't know why the audio was low in the headphones. It was not as strong. But I was kind of straining the electronics of the radio, and at some point the amplifier died. So the radio, it could catch signals because there was a little LED that would light up red when a signal was there. And I would tune around, I could see that it would glow red on some frequency saying, hey, you're receiving something, but there was no more sound. The audio output circuit was dead. So that's how it ended, and probably probably went to the garbage in like 1981 or something. It was a very cheap radio. It had, I used it for about a year and a half, and after a year, it was already having all tons of problems with the switches and everything. It clearly was a really cheaply made radio. And after that, the real, if I would have to say the real first multiband radio that I remember that I've used a lot and that I know is, of course, this one here, the Patrolman CB60. This was, my dad bought this somewhere in 82, 83, something like that. And I remember, looking at the box, it's saying so cool, listen to emergency and airplanes and stuff. And I tuned a lot of signals on this thing. But it's interesting to see that these radios are so, they're really not very sensitive when you compare that to even the, for example, this old Uniden is not sensitive if I compare it to my Icon or to, even the Pro 2006 here or the other Radio Shack scanners I've got. But even this is much better than whatever this thing gets. It's clearly not sensitive compared to anything else. For example, if I tune the 2-meter band, even this, the Pro 2006 with a little antenna here, it will get lots of repeaters. This one, with its telescopic, will not even receive any of these, or there's only one repeater I think that it gets well, and it's a repeater that's very close to me. It's Rosemont College. There's an antenna with a repeater on it, and because Rosemont College is very close to where I live, I hear that one here on this Patrolman, but I barely hear anything else on the 2-meter band because it's not very sensitive, honestly. Max Edstrong, nice to have you here. Matt says, I've never had any kind of VHF UHF receiver other than an FM radio until I got my SDR Play RSP2 Pro, which is a wideband up to 2 gigahertz. Oh, that's interesting. So your first wideband receiver or scanner radio or whatever you want to call it was actually your SDR. Bullfrog89 says, I really recently moved from the shores of the St. Lawrence, Lake Ontario to Albany. I never expected to hear anything on the marine frequency location. Turns out CSX rail uses a part of the maritime frequencies. Interesting. Here there's a lot of stuff. I mean, if you tune around or scan around the maritime frequencies, 156, 57 megahertz, I can bet you we hear tons of stuff here because there's the old port of Montreal that has all sorts of navigation. There's a port of Montreal that has a lot of boats. So there's quite a lot of stuff, maritime stuff in the 150 megahertz range that we can hear thanks to the St. Lawrence Seaway and all of that here. Bullfrog says, so scan where you don't expect anything. You could get surprised. Absolutely. Scan every frequency range. Let it scan all the time, and you'll be so surprised what you can hear. Absolutely. Max Edstrong says, I remember my brother's old Bearcat scanner with 8 plug-in crystals. Don't remember the model. Yeah, these first one with crystals. That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Man says, I take it back. My Gredic Satellite 750 has airband reception, so technically that was the first VHF receiver. I had that copied anything but the FM broadcast band. Yeah, a lot of these radios had the airband in them. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mike Beef, a.k.a. the Drone Ranger, says, I remember when Kojak used to have a Bearcat scanner in his car for police radio. Candy Clover, nice to have you on board, says he uses a Whistler Oops, WS1040, cool. Retro Electrons, nice to have you here. Pretty cool. Max Edstrike says it was a Birdcat Electra 3. Cool. Cool. Yeah, if you have the software, that would decrypt, absolutely. But most of the encryption for these services are not. There's nothing available to decrypt them. Yeah, Fastload uses this TRX1. Have you ever had Fastload a scanner like a long time ago? Maybe your first scanner you ever had or something? Out of curiosity. Oh, okay. You just answered the question later in the chat. So Pro 34. What does the Pro 34 look like? I'm kind of thinking that I had one in that range. So realistic Pro 34. Let me just check that out. Pro 34. Repix database. No, I did not have that one. But a friend of mine had that one. So that one was with the 800 megahertz. Oh, that's nice. Okay. I remember seeing something like that. What year was that made? Cellular blocked, but of course it was probably easy to unblock the cell stuff, pretty sure. Oh man. Sorry guys. So nice. My first scanner per se. Okay, when I got this was my main multiband receiver for a good 6 years, from about 83 to 89 or something like that. In 89, I got and I don't remember the. I'm gonna check out if that is what I think. I had. Yeah, I got it. Okay, I got it. I had the realistic Pro 42. So the realistic Pro 42 is my first handheld scanner that I had. And it had only 10 channels. And of course, that made it kind of difficult to tune around. And I sold this to a friend of mine after about a year of using it, and purchased a desktop Pro 2022. So the realistic Pro 2022 is my next rig, which was a very nice one, by the way. Pro 2022 was a very, very nice one. Does resemble a lot the Pro 2006, but and then I went from the Pro 2022. I purchased a handheld scanner, which was the Pro 43 that I have over here, and I can actually fetch it right here. So here's the Pro 43 that I still have and still works fine. Of course, I had the mod for the cell band and everything done on it. So this is a very nice one. A friend of mine actually redid all the little buttons, because there's a coating on the button, and when you press, it actually, it's like a little switch. In reality, it does electrical contact, and after many, many years of use, the buttons were not responding anymore. And so a friend of mine has I think it's like a pen with kind of a metal coating on it. So he redid the coating of every button, and it works perfectly. And actually, what he used, he told me that it would actually last much longer than what was originally on the buttons to make the contact. And up to this day, it actually works perfectly well. And I mean, he's done that at least 10 years ago. And as of this day, it still works perfectly well. So that was my main. I bought this one because it had the UHF military band, and I wanted to have that because there was a airport, military base in Plattsburgh, New York, which was pretty big before they shut it down. So here in Montreal, when the military planes were in the air, I could hear the plane transmissions in Montreal, and I caught many transmissions when they were doing exercises. It was a lot of fun. I could hear that just with a rubber duck. I could follow these transmissions. I would not hear the ground tower because it's too far away, but I would hear all the planes in the air, and that made a lot of fun communications in the UHF range for the military stuff. And of course, all of that went away when the Plattsburgh Air Force Base shut down. I stopped hearing pretty much anything military on the UHF range. But at least it was a lot of fun when it lasted, you know. I remember one summer where I believe I tuned in almost every day to and some military communications on the scanner and had tons of fun doing so. So, you know, so this one was my first real good handheld scanner. Um, then I had a few other handhelds. I was in that period of time when, you know, every scanner radio I see I would like to have. I had a Pro 26. The Realistic Pro 26 was the first scanner that Radio Shack sold, the portable scanner that went to 1.3 gigahertz. It was the crappiest handheld scanner I've ever received. It was expensive, and it was a piece of crap scanner because it would overload on everything, and it was just impossible to use. It would overload so much that I would hear stuff on the Pro 43, not on the Pro 26, and it would drive me nuts. So after maybe 2 months of use, I put it on sale on a, I think it was on a, where was it? I'm trying to remember. I think it was on a bulletin board at the grocery store or something like that. And I had paid, I think I had paid $300 on sale. And when I sold it for, I think I got $250 for it, which means I didn't lose a lot. And the guy wanted to bring the price lower, but I told him, I said, look, you know, because when he purchased it, it was not on sale at Radio Shack, and it was on the full price of, I think it was $3.99. I said, look, man, it's $150 off. You're having a good deal, and it's almost not used. And he asked me, he said, oh, why are you selling it? Of course, I did not say because it was the crappiest thing I've ever had. I said, oh, I'm buying another one, and I was buying another one. I purchased the Pro 92 trunk scanner afterward with the money I had, and I was much happier with that thing, even though it dreadfully cost me an insane amount of money because I had to purchase it from the United States. The Pro 92 trunk scanner was not sold in Canada at the time. So that's a little story behind this, and of course the Pro 2006 came into somewhere in 1992. I sold the Pro 2022 that still exists and still works well to a friend of mine, and that's pretty much the little story of my scanner radios. So, you know, yeah, Patrolman or Radio Shack stuff, absolutely, absolutely. Kenny Clover says, can get a lot of weak signal stuff. Cool. Kenny Clover says, rest in peace, Radio Shack. We used to go there after high school to listen to scanners. They had a discount on the roof. I would go there all the time. And there's so many cool things there. Radio Shack was an amazing store in the 80s. Anybody that was interested in communications and electronics and all of that, I mean, Radio Shack was so cool, so cool. I'm really happy to have been able to grow up with a Radio Shack store not far from where I live, where I could go regularly and see all the gadgets and all the stuff they had. And I remember every year on about November, they would have the new catalog, the new catalog for the new year. Every year I would annoy the hell out of the guy. Do you have the catalog? Did you receive a catalog? Do you have your new catalog? And the guy would like just get annoyed and was like, no, we don't have the catalog. And then one day he said, here's your damn catalog. Oh, man. Yeah, for those that don't have scanner radios, there's some interesting stuff in using scanner radio apps in your smartphone. What's cool about a scanner radio app mostly is the ability to listen to scanner radio feeds from around the world. But one of the things that is interesting is that there's some guy once that on the channel said, well, I use a scanner radio app. I don't see why I should buy a scanner. And it's because, the scanner radio app just makes you listen to the feeds they want to make you listen to, which is very limited. When you have a scanner radio in your hands, you can listen to a lot more signals. Wish I had something like that when I was living in Seattle, or the interest back then. There would be lots to hear in a major port like that. Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Fast load. Someone is playing with the repeater video RSC 147.125. I think it's 147.120, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, really? Somebody stole the scanner at a party in your home? That is, there are all sorts of thieves up there. But when you invite people in your home and they steal something, that's the lowest thief, idiot you can have. I mean, that's the lowest grade of thief. You get invited somewhere and you steal something. Zero respect for that, I can tell you that. Zero respect. And I totally feel for you. I had an electronics thing in the. I'm trying to remember what it was. I had I think it was a little synthesizer, a portable synthesizer. It was a cheap thing, and I had the same thing happen. Friends came over, and maybe we were like 10 or 12. And next day, search for my little synthesizer is gone. It's like, I hear 147.120. Somebody is playing with the 147.120 repeater. Mike says, strong off topic, but just started watching HBO series The Americans. Number stations and radio play a significant role in the series. Oh, interesting. Yeah. With all I have here, somebody came over because there was a problem with the window here, and the two guys came over to check the window. I can tell you one thing. When I have people that come here that I don't know who they are, I don't leave the room for a second with all the stuff I've got here. It's too easy for them to just pick up something and go away with it, and you don't even know. You notice that, it could go with one of the radios, and I not even notice maybe, or if I notice it, I have to take, weeks before I notice it. Far too many gadgets. Nice to have you here. Says, remember listening to mobile telephone calls on phone 52600. Oh yeah, before the cell phones. I remember that. They were actually calling, giving a number, some kind of number to have the service, and then they would have the phone patch go through. That's on the original cell phones, the original phones. These were not even cell phones; they were mobile telephones because they would just, communicate. They were two-way radios communicating with a service. And one of the interesting things about that here in Montreal, that frequency range where there were these mobile telephone calls on the bottom part of 152 megahertz was converted and used, and still today, a lot of these frequencies are used by Bell Canada phone service for their technicians to make two-way contact. They still use those frequencies, but they use them now with two-way communications. Rock the Tech Guy, nice to have you here. Candy Clover says rural telephone service in the USA was also some good listening back then. Yep, absolutely. Hey there, William Hills from Florida. Nice to have you on board. Cyberflyer1, nice to have you here. Just found your VHF UHF channel. By the way, love your Pink Floyd time video. Great stuff. Oh, thanks. Man, that's the one where I fast load is in that video. That Pink Floyd time video. Fast load and his wife are in that video. Kenny Clover says, caught an Apache helicopter over my town on video yesterday with my scanner. Cool. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. Artie Gideon, nice to have you here, Randy. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Cyberflyer1 says, I have the Bearcat base scanner for VHF airbands. It's a great scanner, still works after 20 years. Most of these are, electronic devices. They still work perfectly after all the time. Time for another beer, and time for shameless promotion. If you guys enjoy my shows, enjoy what I do, why not give me a little something? You can, of course, give me a PayPal donation, paypal.me/shortwave, or at the Yahoo email that I'm posting right here. It helps me, of course, continue to provide these live shows and, pay for equipment, pay for the expensive internet bill that I have to have this working every week. And if you enjoy what I do, you can also join 12 patrons right now. Give me a little something every month at patreon.com/radio and computers, where you can set up a little something for me every month. And join, of course, these 12 other patrons right now that are participating in all of this. And my next beer is a Trois Pistoles. So we will be enjoying the darker side of beer. And here we go. Look at that. And cheers, everybody. Beer number 2 after over an hour and a half. Time flies. What else? Okay, William Helms. Over your left shoulder past your ear, what portable radio is it? I have a 63 Zenith Royale 710 looking just like it. I wonder which one you're talking about, but if I rapidly go through what I have here, I was going to put the live video so I could see what I'm doing, if it's okay. So up here, there, and there are 3 American 5 AM tube receivers in perfect working order. I just need to plug them in to have them work. This is a Panasonic radio AM FM transistor shortwave that I actually reviewed a couple of years back, where Fastload made a comment about big speaker, and somebody came back frustrated at his comment saying, well, Some people only have that. Some people are sensitive sometimes. And actually, the guy that was sensitive was the guy behind the PCJ radio. That I've heard a lot of stuff, interesting stuff about. This is a Brownie AM, FM, airband, and VHF up to 175 megahertz, which is some overloading of FM signals. So that's a transistor. This one is kind of interesting because it is, you can see the insides actually, because it's just a snap-on here. And here is the insides of that radio. And here there's a 9-volt battery thing. This used to be on a battery holder that was not included with this radio when I got it. But I do have here a battery holder that I think is for 6 AA's that does have the snap that I could put this on, and I believe I could probably use it plugged in or on battery power if I wanted. But very simple radio, eh? Not a lot of parts in here. Kind of cool. I like radios you can easily go and see the insides. It's always a lot of fun to see what it looks like inside a receiver. You know, what I would often do is, you know, like I would take the cover off and take pictures of the insides so that I can have pictures of the insides of every receiver and see their circuitry. I always enjoyed that. And of course, well, the rest is Petrolman's Shortwave 60, which is pretty much like the CB60, except that this one has 40 channels, 1 to 40. This one has the shortwave band from 6 to 18 megahertz. I should make some videos and receive stuff on this thing. It's not very good on shortwave. It overloads a lot with the FM stations here. So that's the V2 MRC repeater identifying on 147, 120. And this one is really close to where I live. This is on top. It's on top of the Collège de Rosemont, which is very close to where I am. So anyway, so the other ones are portable scanners, pretty much. So I don't know if I've answered your question, William. Candy Clover says I have the smaller memory Pro 91 at the moment. I got it on eBay really cheap. Cool. Jerry says, anyone use the Uniden SDS 100? Thinking on asking Santa for it. Put it on the list. Huh. Max Headstrong says, I bought a Birdcat VCD 996 XT trunking scanner a few years ago. Found it very hard to program. Kind of gave up. Some are not super simple. Some are kind of difficult. To understand. And some are difficult to understand because the manual is bad. For example, the Pro 92 trunk scanner. Its biggest problem, which is here, its biggest problem is that the manual does not explain well how to program trunk stuff. And I actually understood how to program the trunk stuff partly by myself, and another part is because I found a guy that had made his own manual of how to program the LTE trunking. And that's where I understood how to program it correctly, because the manual is really, really bad. It's like the manual for the ICOM ICR 20. The manual for the ICR 20 is really, really crap in many, many aspects of trying to explain how to do things. Brian Iowa says he's got the Uniden SDS 100. Awesome scanner with a great display. Randy in California says, great to see you on Saturday. Pretty cool to see you here too. What do we have going down here? Kenny Clover says SDS 100 isn't worth it unless you need to receive P25 simulcast. Even then, communication pager is better. Jerry says, I would bug the Radio Shack guy so much for catalogs that he would give me the store main catalog. It was a bit wrinkled, but it worked. I would annoy two guys when I was in my teenage years. I would annoy the Radio Shack guy with the catalog every year. And back then I had the Commodore 64 computer, and I would buy the Compute Gazette. And every month I would bug the guy at the magazine stand for, have you received the Compute Gazette? Have you received the Compute Gazette for the month? Because I wanted to have it so bad. And he also would just like, no, I don't have it. Okay, I don't have it. I remember one month when he jumped one edition, and I didn't get it. And I was like, how come I don't have the August edition? I don't have the August edition. You don't have the August edition, but it's out now. It's out. Oh, the guy was so annoyed. So I would annoy two people actually. Art Dodd, nice to have you here. Thank you for the nice comment. Brian Iowa says, I remember going to Radio Shack to buy crystals for my scanner and CB walkie-talkie. Oh man, they were expensive. I remember looking at the crystals and I was like, man, this is so expensive just to get, an extra channel or something. I was so annoyed at that. It was like, oh man, just crazy. Just looking here, my phone buzzed. Okay. So, oh yeah, Brian, I remember the base unit, the crystal base unit, that had these little red lights, and when it was scanning, actually, it would go through the red lights, saying which crystal or which frequency is being scanned right away. Oh, this is fun tonight. After the show, I think I'm gonna tune only the old receivers and see things and try to listen to shortwave on that and try to find signals on that and maybe try to scan around with the Pro 2006. These haven't worked much in a long time. They've been pretty much gathering dust, and I don't like radios gathering dust. I like to have them used from time to time, regularly. So, who knows, fast load, you might have a job of fixing the display here and fixing the scratchy pots. If you want a job, I'll be happy to hand that over to you. And I'll be happy to pay if you want. I've got no problem with that. I mean, when somebody does something, I like to compensate. Or we'll find. I know you don't like money. We'll find some way of compensating. We'll buy beer or something and have a lot of fun. Bullfrog89 says, I have an odd thing on my SDR. I forget a high noise area or going 174.100 to 179.900 with a thin pronounced peak at 174.300. That's interesting because above 174, if I'm not mistaken, there used to be these were the upper channels of the TV channels. Above 174, there was channels 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That would go from something like 174 up to 215 megahertz or something like that. Those were the TV channels, and there were no other types of communications in that little range. So I don't know what that could be. What are the frequencies for the HD TV, for high definition TV? When they moved to their digital HD TV signal, what are the frequencies are they using for that range? Anybody knows that? I was wondering about that the other day. What frequencies they use on HD TV channels? Art Dot says, I live in New York City suburb. Back in the day on VHF, listening to New York City mobile operator. A lot of neat conversations in the metro area. Yeah, and when you live not far or in a big city, there's quite a lot of stuff to listen to, actually. I remember going into the subway here in Montreal and having the frequencies that they would use within the subway tunnels. They had some links, some repeaters within the tunnels, so they could actually have radio communications. And what I would do is, with the Pro 43, I would, in the winter time, I would put the Pro 43 in the jacket, my jacket, and the antenna would not stick out; it would be within my jacket, and it would just scan through the SDM subway frequencies that I had from a book or something, and would listen to the communications with the SDM. That was kind of fun. I also, one of the things I did, and one of the things you could still do today, just be careful, because there's one thing that you don't want is to seem weird, but shopping centers, a lot of big stores, or a lot of these, towers that have, all sorts of companies in them. A lot of them still use analog two-way radios within their area for security. And you can actually walk outside. Just don't go into the shopping center or the building with, I don't know, looking like this. That looks very weird. And but you can, especially if you have in the winter, it's fun because with the coat, you can actually put it in your jacket. Nobody knows, and you put your earphones. People think you're listening to, your smartphone for some music or stuff. And it's cool because you can program all the frequencies and listen to the security stuff. Sometimes kind of interesting. From here, there's a shopping center about 1.5 kilometers away from here, and they have a UHF frequency they use, and I sometimes punch in the frequency and leave it there, and you hear all of these things happening in the shopping center and people shoplifting and whatever. It's kind of interesting. Mike B, the Drone Ranger, says, used regular handheld radio 152 megahertz and have the mobile operator dial the number for me. That's kind of interesting. That's kind of nice. Theo, what a gorgeous radio. Do you buy radios still today, or you stopped? The main reason I stopped is mostly because my financial obligations have my money going in different directions. But I'm starting to kind of settle down on everything here. So in 2019, expect me to probably go back on the shopping spree of radios, because I still love radios, and there are some radios I want. If I had a priority for 2019, I'd like to have an Nikon ICR 30, which is kind of a whopping $800 here. It's a lot of money. I'd like to buy several shortwaves, maybe a C-Crane Skywave that I don't have, that I could review, the XH Data D808, So these are things that I will try to purchase in 2019. If things continue the way they are and the monetization on YouTube goes as good as it is right now, I'll have money to buy radios in 2019, and we'll probably have a few radios. One that I might be interested also is the one that like Fastload has, the Whistler TRX1, and I believe there's the TRX2 now, which is kind of an upgraded version. So I don't know. We'll check that out, and as money is available, of course, we'll try to make money available for radios. William Helm says, yes, the Panasonic Retro AM/FM shortwave. I almost bought one, $40. Was a good deal 10 years ago. Yeah, that I purchased because I just found the looks cool, because it really looked like a retro radio, and it's actually very heavy because it has two big D-sized batteries in it, so it's quite heavy with the batteries. This too, I haven't done a lot of videos. I need to do more videos of listening to shortwave on this, but it's kind of cool. It's a decent sensitivity, kind of a cool look. But if I had one word, I think it was about $60 Canadian. What I would like to say is that I found it's a little expensive for an analog style radio. But, anyways, I purchased it because I wanted to review it. And so, of course, there's a review on the channel. I reviewed it several years ago when I purchased this one. So we'll check that out for sure. Mike, Drone Ranger, the hot radio back in the day for all band receiver was the Zenith Transoceanic. Yeah, these are nice. These are nice. Yeah, some models had single sideband. Some yeah, I know one thing. Let me just go back here because I think I jumped. Okay, here we go. Some might have BFO or something. Hart, no, I don't have my ham license. I need to do it. Bye, PLF Radio. It was nice to have you on board. Cyberflyer misses the shortwave magazine. Retro Electron says, yay, Commodore 64. Yeah, well, I still have the Commodore 128 on the top there. An Atari 1040 ST back there. And an Amiga 500 over there. And an Amstrad PTC 640 over there. That are all in good working condition. I know one thing about the R30, and it's like the R8600 from Icon. They will get more capability as the firmware upgrades come, for sure. Candy Clover, can you make more R20 videos, please? It is my most favorite receiver, and the videos are really good. Yeah, I got a lot of people asking me that for multiple reasons, because a lot of people also don't have they don't understand the manual. And I've had a lot of people say, you know what, your R20 videos were really helpful because they helped me understand something I never understood in the manual. Because the manual is bad. Again, I'm sorry, but if there's one thing about the R20 that's really, really horrible, that manual. I don't know who wrote that manual, but I wonder if some kind of Japanese translation in English or something. It's crappy. All I gotta say is crappy. Max S5 says, remembers drooling over the realistic DX150 in Radio Shack catalog. Oh, man. Thanks, Candy Clover, for the information. So, take care, Retro Electrons. Kenny Clover says you can walk in with scanner and earbuds in most places, and people don't mind in USA. Just don't do it in casino because they're more paranoid and will tackle you. Yeah, but you know, still, I found over years that when you walk around with a scanner radio, anything that looks like a walkie-talkie, you know, with an antenna like this, many places aren't super, you're not super welcome in a lot of places. So, you know, you just put it in your jacket and hide it. Nobody knows. Cyberflyer wants us to have the Realistic DX360. Love this radio. Edward Gilstrap, nice to have you here from Riverside County. Nice to have you on board, Edward. Brian Iowa says, I can't believe the casino security in our town uses analog, and I have no problem listening to them in the UHF range. Probably a lot of them still use analog. Here, I know that the Casino of Montreal is on analog. I've monitored that a few times. Yeah, Candy Clover is okay for the links, but it'd be nice. It'd be nice to have. Hey, let's do a few little things here. I noticed that there's not a lot of so let me just go here. So let's on the VHF channel. Let's just do a little change here. So let's have Max Headstrong add your moderator. So Max Headstrong is moderator. Let's have, let me just go here. Check it out here. William Helms, moderator. There we go, hello William. Cool. So we got a few more moderators. I think that's pretty cool. What else do we have? Let me just check it out here. Let's put Theo, moderator. So we got a few more moderators than that can actually tackle the bad guys that sometimes show up. Mark Clark, nice to have you on board from Pennsylvania. Pretty cool. Matam Bali, how about being moderator? Here we go. Moderator status for Matam Bali. Anybody that's a moderator in the shortwave channel and not here that I could hand, I'll hand you. I don't remember all of the names of those that are moderator on the other one. So a few more moderators here. So nice to have you here, Mark Clark. Pretty cool. Mike says a little bit of studying and can get your ham license in no time. Yeah, I know. I actually have the Industry Canada exam that I passed because you couldn't have the questions online, and I think last time I did it, I had like 87% or something like that, 86%. Pretty crazy. William Howe says, my car I used to have that looks so much like a detective's car. Then my brother drive it, and he loved it better than his own. Love people's surprise looks too. Brian Iowa remembers programming the Commodore 16. It was black. I would sit there and program it for hours, and it would lock up on me. So I upgraded to 64. I would be hours at a time programming these, entering the code for all of these games and programs in the Computes Gazette and stuff. Pretty amazing. Rock. What else do we have? I need to have a little more, Mike. I need to have a little more of interaction. It's kind of a trust thing, and I don't want to offend anyone. By the way, that would are not moderators. I'm sure a lot of you are trustable. It's just that I need to have enough interaction with you guys in order to just make sure that it's okay that you're a moderator. Shortwave 60 SWL16N, nice to have you on board. And says that he's from Stockholm, Sweden, I believe. And he's using a Yaesu VR500 scanner. Cool. I've never picked up any wireless mics in a 70 megahertz band. And by the way, Radioactive, you are also a moderator. Here we go. Radioactive is a moderator. Oh, no problem, Mike. Be here regularly, and you'll be at some point. And thanks for the offer. It's just a question of trust, a question of having people that I see all the time, that I know are great, great people. I'm sure you're a great person, but I just need a little more. I just need a little more input on the trust side. Trust is something you earn. In a perfect world, everybody would be moderators, but unfortunately, that's not how it is. And okay, we're at hour number 2 almost already. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, anything? Let's just check the satellites here. Some satellites are coming up. I'm curious to see if we can hear. So, XW2C is coming up for an amazingly nice pass over Montreal. So, we're going to try that. I like these. XW2C, XW2D also coming up, and we'll be overlapping each other almost. So, let's remove these from here so I can tune my icon a little better. Let's put this here, and this one here, and let's check out what we can check out with these satellites coming over our region. Check it out. So the frequency range, I'm just going to need the frequency ranges again. And we'll start by listening to the beacon. I'm just going to put the J9 sat list. For those that are wondering for one of the best lists for satellite status and frequencies and everything you need to know, the Japanese ham JE9PEL is amazing. And here's the link to his sat list. And it's nice because you have it on the site, but you also have a doc file, an Excel file, or CSV, comma separated value file. So there's a lot of stuff, and there's even a Doppler thing, which I believe is to be used with some types of software. So here you will have everything you need to know about every satellite. And when you go to that website, you'll see that some satellites have a kind of yellow-colored bar, kind of yellow-orange colored. That means the satellite has been logged and is in working order. And the ones that don't have a bar, well, either there's nobody to log them or they're just not working. So here you'll have a nice status, and you've got all the frequencies for what you need to know about these satellites also at the same time, which is very, very nice. The only thing that's a little complex is that you got to understand that some satellites on this list have a different name than on, for example, the tracking software sometimes. So you'll see one here and say, oh, there's, this satellite. And you look at the list and it's like, I don't know, it's not on the list. And it is, it's just that it has a different name. So the first one will be 2C. 2C has a beacon on 145.790. And the single sideband amateurs are on 145.795 to 145.815. So let's drop. We're going to check, make sure that everything is all right.
Cloudy.
Yep.
Lows 8 to 16 above. Northwest winds 15 to 30
So let's
miles.
145.79. Put it in sideband. And we'll see when it actually arrives overhead if we hear anything. We'll wait for that. And try to do a little bit of yeah, I go also to that msat.org Bobby webpage from time to time, but I like the Japanese one better for some reason. And the Japanese one is updated every day. What made me go off of the AMSAT website is sometimes they have a tendency to not update for a while. SW60N is scanning PMR 446 band. Yeah, the number to the right is the character count, absolutely. Hey, McGlown, nice to have you on board from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. You are the lucky bum on vacation or something. In the warmth. Bobby Burgess should have FO29. Yeah, there's not a lot of stuff on FO29 that I've heard. Jerry DX, sell some of those old radios and buy an R30. Nope. I'm not selling old radios to buy a new one. I'll buy a new one and keep the old ones. I have too much regret selling some of the older receivers that I've got. So, Kenny Clover, you ever received Brazilian Satcom Pirates on 200 megahertz band military repeater sats and FM? I hear them very, very weak, but I don't hear them enough to make them out. But when I tune some of these frequencies, I do see that there's something in the background, very weak signals, but I've never been able to make them out really. Bullfrog89 says, went to the link. Seems that it's already there. It's possible. I've shared it in the past a few times. Hey, David Arden, nice to have you here. KJ4CMY. Had a friend over this afternoon and helped me get my G5 RV back up after being down for 3 weeks. Cool. So now you're back in business. Oh, I didn't know that SpaceX had some kind of ham satellite on board. But yeah, that I guess. But that'd be fun. Yeah, the Japanese guys list is really, really amazing, and it's updated almost every day. AMSAT. One funny thing that happened with the AMSAT website about 2 years ago, it got hacked, and they started posting tons of things and links of all sorts of, trying to infect you with whatever junk. And it took time before the AMSAT guys actually not only realized they were hacked, but actually put stuff back. For months at a time, all it said was, we'll be back soon. Okay. Because that's where I was looking at my information. And that's when I searched for something else and stumbled across that Japanese ham satellite frequency list. And I mean, that list is great. Since I have the Office stuff here, I often download the XLS file and open it in Excel, which I find it kind of a little easier to manage. in fine stuff. Also, what's nice on the Japanese list is that you have all the frequencies that are there. You don't have just a status. You have the frequencies they use, beacon, repeater, whatever frequency, depending on what they do. And if you just use the one on the browser, I use Control F to find, and I just type, for example, I just use Control F. I typed XW2C. It sends me directly to the satellite. The frequencies are there. It's clear. It's easy to manage. I'll just do one thing here, because I noticed that I have a problem with my feed line. For example, now, this is not as strong as it should be. And I wonder if there's something that happened the other day here. There's a, now it's stronger. You see? When they came and fixed my window the other day, the guy dropped the window. And this is a big and heavy window. He dropped the window. And when he dropped it, I noticed that it dropped directly on the coax that's coming into my icon. And I just put my feet on it, and my signal went from S2 to S4. S4, I know, is the strength, normal strength for listening to 162.400 in general. And I think that he broke the coax when he dropped the window on it. So that means I'll have to do something about the coax there, because I think it's broken. I just put my feet on it and the signal just went up. So definitely the coax got broken when you dropped the window. So here we go. We'll put this. And let's try to see if we hear the beacon. And if we hear the beacon, that means we'll be able to hear the satellite. It's starting its pass right now. So we're going to try that out. XW2C. What is the ISS detector app, Bobby? On Android, I use one app that is the app to use for everything on radios and stuff, and it's the Evans Above app. I mean, on Android, the Evans Above app is the best. So, for example, here I've just switched it on. So now I got ads because I haven't paid for it, but it gives you all the satellites on this side that are going to pass and everything. If you go back, you have visual satellites. If you like to look at the sky and see the satellites, the iridium flares. If anybody has never seen iridium flares, they're really cool to spot in the sky. They last only a few seconds, but they're really bright. Radio satellites, of course, for the radio satellites. You got the International Space Station that has its own pass times, and you can look at this now. And it has, of course, a nice little map there with all the satellites. For example, right now, when it's on the general map, you could see here that you see satellites that are put on the sky map, show you what's up over your head. Some of them are easy to see visually with your eyes. So it's a lot of fun also when you go out camping or you go somewhere with your friends and the sky is really dark. And you can say, oh, there's this satellite coming this direction. You look at the sky, it's really cool. But there's radio satellites, and you got all the radio satellites that are there. And of course, you've got the map here. And of course, now we've got XW2C. So that means when you're there, it tells you where the satellite is at any point, and so on. Heavens Above, available for Android, and it's I don't see any other app that could be better than this for satellite tracking and radio satellites, honestly. Well, might need to replace it, absolutely. Make him buy a new one. Man, you should have seen the guy. I can tell you one thing. If you'd have seen that guy, you would just forget it. You're not going to start annoying the guy. So I'm going to try to tune in and see if we can hear stuff. Satellite's coming to an interesting pass. So I hear the beacon. The beacon's here. So let's try for hands on the frequencies. Yep. I hear one around 145 and 05, but it's not very strong.
Aftermarket folks will be marketing some stuff that we can use. We're not going to, I don't think we're going to do anything on 2 gigs here. If we do anything, it might be at 5. But anyway, we'll see.
So I'm hearing them.
John, have a good one. And you take care and have a nice holiday if we don't talk to you. Yeah, happy
Ontario station VE3.
Roger, here is Keith. You are Echo India Echo Hotel Keith, and we're at Echo Nancy 82. EN82, Southwest Ontario. Have a great evening.
This is cool.
Have a good one. DA3 KFF Echo Nancy 82 on satellite.
It's kind of fun. These are this is a satellite, this XW2C satellite, Jerry. 145 plus minus Doppler one. It's on 145. 808 right now. VA3KSF. So VA3KSF coming through the XW2C satellite right now. And there's the XW2D satellite also that's there. Let's try that one. 2D will be on 860 to 880. So let's try the 2D also. So this is XW2D satellite. There's some activity there too. Trying to get stronger signals, but it's interesting to hear the hams through the satellite, 2C and 2D. Cuba 2, LO74, what's the frequency? Hey, David in Barcelona, nice to have you here. Always nice to have you here. LO74. This one has, okay, 437, 445. That's that's AFSK and 9600 baud FSK. It's more like digital stuff. Kind of interesting. That's interesting, that guy keying here through the satellite. That same ham station, VA3, that was on the other satellite is on this one now. Kind of interesting to see. So, receiving satellite. I'm using a mobile vertical art. I've got a small mobile vertical on a metal shed in the backyard on the top floor. So it's surprising for just a mobile vertical, honestly. Of course, if I had some kind of directional antenna, I would get much stronger signals. But it's still surprising all the signals from the satellites I can actually receive just using the mobile vertical antenna in my backyard. An antenna that I paid 99 cents. I still can't believe it. I should have I think there were like 5 or 6 left. I should have took all 6 of them. So Saudi set SO50 coming up, AO73. So interesting to see what's up there. It's kind of, it's fun to play around. Usually now I'm not using the laptop, but usually my laptop, because my radio has a serial adapter that I plug USB. So what I do is usually this is plugged on my laptop that I'm using right now to actually do any do the stream. And what happens is that it actually to control the radio for the Doppler shift. Bobby says, what's told me discount is better than whips? Yeah, a discount will probably do a better job than a vertical for satellite tracking. But the best that you can have is, of course, a directional antenna that is actually following the satellite with a, as much as I can. But it's surprising. Hart says, I use vertical as well, where it's better for International Space Station than others think. You know, the problem with the vertical antenna is that because it's meant to receive horizontal signals and not anything from space, technically, you tend to have to look at the passes of the satellites, and you'll see how high in the sky they are. Usually, anything that is straight over my head is not necessarily the best pass because I'll have the signal, but as it's moving overhead, I'll lose the satellite pretty much because the antenna is totally deaf right above. And then I'll get the satellite again as it's moving away. So I'd rather have a pass that maybe is 40 or 50 degree high because my vertical antenna will receive that signal much better, and I won't have that deaf moment where it doesn't get anything. And it's the same for the International Space Station. When the pass is a certain angle, and not just that, the ISS also has an angle at which the signal is being sent. So what I've noticed is when the pass is to the west of me and about 40 or 50 degrees high, I have the best signals in the world for the International Space Station. I mean, it rocks my S meter up to S8, S9. At peaks, the signal is really strong. When it's east of me, I have much weaker signals because the ISS antenna is not broadcasting in my direction. It's like sending a signal on the other side. So that the signal is not as strong. And the worst pass that I can get from the International Space Station is right overhead because I'll have the signal, it's going to fade out and fade back in because of the deafness just above my head of the vertical. So I would need to have I need to have some kind of some kind of omnidirectional antenna. Yeah, turnstile antenna can do SATs really well. Maybe I would have probably the Brazilians better also if I had a antenna that I could actually have a direction where I can actually pinpoint for signals. That's for sure. So, hey guys, we've been on for 2 hours, 23 minutes. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm a little hungry. I'm going to go and cook myself some food. And actually, I don't know what to eat, so I think I'm going to go to the grocery store and see what I can buy for food tonight. Unless I just go get a pizza and end it. But I will be continuing my radio night here, and so look forward for maybe some videos of some of the catches on the VHF UHF range tonight on the channel, and also maybe some stuff on the shortwave because I'll be mixing the shortwave and the VHF UHF stuff together. So David Arden, how can you eat when there are radios to play with? You eat with the radios to play with. And then you got to clean them up because they're all greasy. So hope that you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with the shortwave show on Friday. So that's Friday, November the 23rd, 2000 hours UTC. And I hope you're going to be here, guys. Always fun to be here. And sorry to make it a little short today, 2 hours 24, but hope you still enjoyed the show. We'll be back with the VHF UHF show in about a month's time from now. So take care, everybody. Hey, Terry Kremen, nice to have you here. Thanks for the comment. It was a nice show. Have a great week. And I haven't decided yet, but who knows? Maybe we'll have a surprise Thanksgiving show if I'm able to have enough time. Maybe we'll have a surprise Thanksgiving show for shortwave this coming Thursday, or we'll be checking that out. So take care, my friends. Always nice to have you on board. Kenny Clover says, thank you for doing my favorite show. We'll be scanning VHF UHF outside on this handheld WS1040. Cool. I'll have all of these on tonight. Plus, I'll pop up the SDR for shortwave here. And I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun tonight with the radios. Enjoy a nice, easy Saturday evening. You know, I had a big week this week again, so it's gonna be nice to just relax and have no cares in the world for a couple of hours. So take care. Have fun, everybody. Hope to see you soon. Love you all. And stay safe, my friends. See you Friday for the Shortwave Show, 2000 hours Universal Time. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.